Hi, I'm James with British Customs. Today we're going to start our first video of our how-to series on maintenance, tips, tricks, recommendations, stuff like that. Today we're going to do an oil change on this liquid-cooled street scrambler and show you how it's done, what tools to use, torque recommendations, stuff like that. So, as with any maintenance you want to ever do on this bike, first thing you need to do is get a manual. You want to follow the manual, look for torque specs, because we're going to show you how to do it on this bike. Things might be a little bit different on whatever model you have, whether it be the drain plug in a different location, something like that, what size tool to use. The other thing, they tell you in the manual, these are things that we'll be giving you little tips on. It says warm up the bike. Don't warm up the bike in your garage. Warm it up outside. If you really want to do it right, go for a ride. Don't just let it sit there idling for 10 minutes trying to warm it up. Go for a ride for about 2 or 3 miles, come back, let it idle upright for about a minute, and then shut it off. And then you can put it down on its side stand, and then you're ready to do your oil change. So once you have the bike warmed up, you're ready to start draining the oil. First thing we want to do is get this cap, which is our fill cap. We want to get that loosened up so that we can pull it out. Now what you got to be careful is that this pipe, if you have a high pipe like this, it's blocking that. It's going to be very hot, so you don't want to burn yourself. If you got gloves that you can put on, would be, heat protective gloves, like a good thick leather welding glove or something like that, just to protect yourself from the pipe. Otherwise, just be really careful so you don't burn yourself, because you got to be able to pull the cap out like that. I'm just going to leave it up here for now, just like one thread in. Because when I pull the drain plug, I don't want it to just come flying out of there. So we'll pull the drain plug and then we'll pull this cap and it will start to really flow. I recommend having a nice shallow oil pan under here, which gives you room to work under the bike. I mean, you can use whatever you got. Just make sure it's going to be sufficient enough to at least hold a gallon of fluid that's going to come out of there. But I really like these ones from Harley-Davidson. They're like super low and wide and gives you tons of room to get under there. So especially if you happen to have a bike that's lowered, this bike's nice and high, so it's not really a problem. But on some bikes, when they're a lot lower, you just can't get your hands under there to work. So I recommend that. And if you have a closed top like this, even if you have an open one, I recommend make sure that it's clean so you can see when the oil comes out. You want to make sure your oil's not having any metal or anything on there. So if you have metal debris on top of this already, you're not going to know where it came from. So you want to be able to see what's coming out of your old oil. Make sure you don't have any issues with your motor. The other thing, if you have a skid plate or something here, anything blocking your oil filter or your drain plug, you need to get that out of the way before you start. So now on this bike, we have a drain plug going straight up here. Most of the older bikes all have it in the front. Going this way, it's like a 13 millimeter or 12 millimeter bolt going in there. This is a 8 millimeter Allen. Let's take that one out. I don't recommend using power tools on your drain plugs. This is going into your oil pan, and you don't want to end up stripping threads out or something and ruining your day. So you want to feel that it's going nice and easy. Once it's cracked like that, you should be able to take it out by hand, no problem. Make sure your oil pan is underneath. Unscrew that. Pull it out. It's coming out pretty quick. If I pull the cap off, it should come out a little faster. So you want to let this keep draining until there's pretty much no more drips coming out of there. Now we're going to remove the oil filter. If you have an aftermarket one with a nut on there, that would be a 17 millimeter nut. If you have the stock style that doesn't have a nut on there, you need to use a fluted cap to get that off if you've got one. If not, then you use a strap wrench like this. This is not the right size for this one, unfortunately. Mine went missing, so I'm going to use a strap wrench today to get this done. I believe the size is a 64 millimeter 14 flute, if you're looking for one. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% positive, but I think that's what size it is. But if you got a strap wrench, this will fit any filter you want. So you just want to get it close to the size you need it to be. Slide it up and around. And then as you turn this, it'll just keep getting tighter and tighter until it starts spinning the filter. And that's it. Filter's spinning. I should be able to get it off by hand at this point. And you're gonna get a bunch of oil come pouring out of here too, so you don't want to make a mess. Don't just go dropping it. If you're using an open pan here, you don't want to just go dropping the filter into there. It's going to splash everywhere. So I'll let that drain for a little bit. So one thing you want to be careful not to do is to get any of this oil on your rear tire. If you're using an open pan and you drop that filter and it splashes, it's going to get all over your tire. So it's not a bad idea to have a towel or something here to just block any oil that might splash up. Another thing is to wear rubber gloves so you don't get it on your hands, because used waste oil, especially in the state of California, like everything else, causes cancer. So I think everywhere else in the country, it causes cancer too. So you, at this point, stop dripping so much, I can pull it out. Leave the filter right there. That's another thing I really like about this. You put the filter there and it can drain out nice. Because if you just lay it down like that, it's not draining out. So put it there. And we'll let it drain a little more. All right, so now we want to put our drain plug back in. We just want to clean the mating surface where the washer fits up in there. You want to use something that's safe for paint, not going to hurt anything. I like this suspension cleaner. It's great, doesn't hurt any rubber seals or anything like that. I can use it all over the bike. But just to be safe, you just put it on the rag and just wipe there so you're not spraying it all over the place. But any multi-purpose solvent should be pretty safe to use for this. Just wipe that clean. Make sure you put a new washer on there. Start screwing that up. Now we're going to torque it down to 25 Newton meters. Again, if you're working with a different model, check the torque spec on your model. You don't want to be over tightening this because you'll eventually ruin the threads after a couple of oil changes. So it's got to be where they tell you to put it to keep it lasting for a long time. Make sure it's clean, and now we can go fill the oil. So it's also good to have an assortment of funnels around your garage. You never know what you're going to be filling up with oil. This one here from Redline is really an awesome funnel. It gets into weird spaces, and particularly like on this model here, I took the same funnel and I just heated it up a little bit and melted that so it could go straight. And I do that with a lot of them. I have them cut off in weird spots, so I have quite a few of these funnels. You can get these nice and cheap in all different sizes, and you can cut them to the right length that you need. They're really good. And then these, if you find flexi funnels, you usually find these in like cooking places, and they're good because they can handle high temperatures usually. So it's pretty cool, and they can get you into odd spots that you normally can't get into. But for this bike here, we want to use this funnel right here. So now, one thing you want to do is make sure these pipes are cool to the touch before you go sticking a plastic funnel in there and leaning it up against your pipes. Make sure everything's clean up here so that you don't go putting this in here and knocking some kind of debris into your motor. That won't be good. So we can slide that in. Right there, we'll be able to fill that up. The other thing you want to do is make sure your window is clean here so you can see your oil level. And the reason that we're filling this up before we put our oil filter on, because you can make a possible airlock into your oil filter if you fill the oil after putting the filter up there. So we want to put the oil in, and then we're going to screw the oil filter up. So another thing I want to mention is that the level on this oil window here is with the bike upright, not with the bike on its side stand. So if you don't have a way of keeping your bike upright, then you just want to fill it so you just see it coming to the bottom of the window there, and stand the bike upright and see where it lands in here. We do not want to overfill it. You don't want to be above the highest point of that mark right there. So you just want to get it between there. We're going to fill it. Then after we run it, get it warmed up again, then we're going to check it a couple minutes after it's had a chance to settle and see where it lands, and then top it off. So now we can start pouring it in. Don't pour it too quickly. You don't want to make a mess if it starts backing up. So now, remember, you want to keep an eye on this window as you're filling it up. It would help if you have two people to do it, one guy pouring, one person looking at the window. We don't go by capacity of the oil in the motor. That's just the generic number that they give you. That's what the capacity is, but you always have leftover oil from your last oil, so you can't go by that. We fill it up to the level, and then we need to run it, and then you need to check it again. So you don't want to be overfilling it by just dumping, 3.8 quarts of oil in there or something. Okay, here it comes. Stop right there. Let it settle. Let's see where we're at. So right there, we're at the upper level of that mark there. And I still have a decent amount of oil left in my can here. So that's where we want to leave it. We're going to put the filter on, we're going to run it, and then we will top it off for whatever oil it needs. All right, so next we're going to put our oil filter on. We want to clean the surface up there. Any multi-purpose solvent should do. If you have brake clean, I guess that'll do too. Just be careful, you don't want to have anything that's going to damage paint. So anything that says it's safe for paint and rubber, you'd be good to go. I like suspension cleaner because I know it's going to be safe. Just get that clean of any debris that might go into the motor or cause a leak. If you got an oil filter that doesn't have a pre-lubed O-ring, make sure you get some clean engine oil and just smear a little oil on the O-ring before tightening it up there. K&N filters come pre-lubed. I'm going to spin it up there. If you don't have either a 17 millimeter nut, or if you're using the stock style and you don't have the cap wrench, do not use a strap wrench to tighten this up. Just make it as tight as you can by hand. If you have the suitable wrench for tightening that up, we're going to tighten it to 10 Newton meters. So this one, we use a 17 millimeter socket. Okay. You don't want to be making this too tight because when you go to take it off, it's going to be really tight. So they just tend to get much tighter after they're on there. And I've seen these nuts actually break off because they're on there too tight, and you don't want to have to do that. So just make it to 10 Newton meters or as tight as you can do it by hand. So now we can pull our funnel out and put our cap back on. Make sure that the O-ring is in place and make sure it's not any tears or anything in there. If there are, you need to replace that O-ring. Put that in there. And just make that hand tight. So next we want to run the bike for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're going to let it sit for about 2 minutes, and we'll check the oil level again after that and top it off as necessary. Make sure your oil light goes out right away when you start it up, and then just look around, make sure you don't have any leaks. All right, so now that we've run it, let it get warmed up, oil circulated through, we're gonna let it sit for about 2 minutes so everything can drain back down to the tank, and we're gonna check the level there. So now you can see that that oil is below our level here. Now, this is our low point here, and this is our high point there. So ultimately, you wanna be dead center is what your target is. You're never gonna get it just perfect there, but don't go too high and don't go too low. That's what it is. So I can see it coming up, so I want to stop pouring now. I'm just about in the middle of that. Make sure my funnel drains out. I'm going to put just a tad bit more. That's it. I think that's going to put me right in the center. That looks pretty good right there. Now again, this level is with the bike upright, not on your side stand. And this is the low point, that's the high point. We don't want to be above that high point because then you have, excess oil. You're gonna have too much drag on your clutch. You're gonna have more resistance under your pistons and everything. So it's designed to run with that much oil in it. If you run it too low, then you have inadequate oil flowing through there. So dead center is optimum. No higher than that mark, no lower than that mark, and that's all I can say about that. So once you're all done with that, at the right level, you can put the cap back on, get off your computer and go for a ride.